the robes of Jesus, knowing that just by touching it, there would be healing. In Jairus, in persisting to go with the Lord, even after hearing that his daughter had died. In dwelling and being with her, or with Jesus during this time. Allowing him to move in his own time, in his own space, without actually rushing him along. And maybe that's the importance. But I do believe that in many ways there is a balance that one needs to get about the faith. Faith in ourselves and faith in God. Because if you can have faith in yourself, if you believe in yourself and you believe in what you can do and how you can do it, it is so much easier to have faith in God. I'm not talking about an obnoxious kind of faith of, oh, I'm so great and I'm so mighty and everything I do is wonderful. I'm talking about a time of knowing what your ability is and using them under that of God's direction. And that we see, it's interesting that Jesus takes along the 3 disciples, the 3 closest to him. The 3 I firmly believe he knew had the most faith in him. And he takes the mother and father. And maybe it was just a way of testing the others when he said to them, she's not dead, she's just sleeping. And if they said, wow, that would be great, maybe he would have allowed them to see what is actually going to happen. But they sneer at Jesus. And he realizes that their faith is actually going to become a stumbling block in the healing of this young girl. We so often have this stumbling block that we ourselves put in our way when we have the lack in faith in God, lack of faith in ourselves, but above all, the lack of faith in God. For many years, the beginning of the church was not structures, it wasn't buildings, it wasn't something like this. It was meeting in homes around a table. It was small groups meeting. And yes, that was very good, because what actually happened was there was ministry of many. And the ministry grew. And the church, at a stage, decided that we needed to change that. And sometimes we can slip back into the same vein of things. And so mostly today, preachers teach on a Sunday morning. The preaching often takes the form of a word-for-word exposition of Scripture. The believer in the pew carefully listens, analyzes, and consumes the sermon, often taking notes, and the listening self to put firmly in charge of the impact the sermon will have. Sorry. The individuals leave with a few things to work on, and in general feeling better about themselves. The parishioners are reinforced in what they already believe. They feel confident that they have more for their Christian life figured out. And so sometimes a Sunday service like this can become an introspection, a point where we are so busy taking stock of our own lives, so busy looking where we are in our Christian perspective, that we don't actually take that one step further. We don't actually go out and become ministers. We allow the ministry to remain. I mean, after all, I'm getting paid to do this job. Surely I should be the one that's doing everything. And often I've been asked, what part of the body do I see myself? Am I the head? Am I sort of the chairman over the board? Am I the brains, the thought behind what is actually happening? Am I the heart, the impulse, the pulsing of the blood of what it is? And I always answer that, and I always say, I actually think I'm the nervous system. I'm the one that's sort of trying to get the hand to do what the hand should be doing, while the foot is doing what the foot should be doing. Anybody that knows me would know my coordinations are not good. But I try my best through the Spirit to use that coordination. As the history of the church, and you look back at the history of the church, you notice that at a point, around about 300 AD, when the church became formalized, the structure of the church changed. And so you started having the churches, the buildings started being building, and people meeting on a Sunday, because it was now not foreign. You were allowed to do it. You weren't persecuted for doing it. And as the church went along, some of the bad things slipped in. And so we had the Reformation. And Martin Luther, with all of his wisdom and all of his knowledge that he had, Martin Luther would most probably just have been another blip on the radar if it wasn't for the fact that there was the invention of the printing press. They were saying that 76% of everything that was printed was actually Martin Luther's tracts. And another 16% that was printed was in response to what he had actually said. And so we find ourselves at a point where we ourselves are doing things slightly differently. We have the invention of the internet. There are more amateur theologians today than ever before in the history of the church. And that's not wrong, because that is ministering the people's ministry. The fact that I'm ordained by a bishop doesn't give me the exclusive right to the name of minister. Each one of us, in our own sense, is a minister. It is about finding the gift that you have, to know what is your gift and how you use that gift. And so too, the church needs to go through that time of a reformation where we once again reform and look at what we do. It's not about buildings like this and opening mega churches. It's not about closing buildings like this and going back into houses. It's about how do we take church from out of the building into the community and where we live and how we live. That's the important part of what the challenge is for you and for me at this particular time. It's about coming to church on a Sunday and being refilled and then going out and using that in the society where we live. Karl Barth said, "To clasp the hands in prayer is the beginning of an uprising against the disorder of the world." To clasp the hands in prayer is the beginning of an uprising against the disorder of the world. We are called as a Christian body to go to our knees and to pray. We are called to steep ourselves in the Spirit of God and in a time of prayer. We are called to be present in God and in our prayer. And that's the important part of where we are, what you and I have, what you and I are called to do. We need to use this time of prayer. I've spoken to many people around South Africa over the last couple of months. And I think that most of the Christians I've spoken to are actually very negative. We're very negative about where the country's going to and what's happening within the country. We've actually given up. We actually don't believe that God answers prayer anymore. We get to the stage where we believe that the end is nigh, and we're just living it out towards that end. Far more than those around us that maybe don't believe. Those that maybe should be feeling that the end is nigh. And yet we are called to pray. And through prayer, we know that change takes place. Maybe we are called to be the praying body, the person that's on our knees praying. Maybe that's your gift. Maybe that's what you've been called to. We've all been called to pray, but maybe that's the particular gift that you've been given. Or maybe your gift is to actually use those ministries that you've been given, to be evangelists, to go out and to change the world, to live amongst others that they could see Christ living within you. Maybe your gift or your calling is to be of that time and that place where you are amongst others. But whatever you call to, we need to remember the passage that Paul said to the Corinthians. But since you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in the love we have kindled in you, see that you excel in this grace of giving. That's the giving that God is talking to us about. It's about moving what we have in the building on a Sunday and taking it out into the community on a Monday. Living that in the area that we live in. Meeting around the tables and breaking bread together, not like we do at the top here, but physically breaking bread together and sharing. It's amazing how often by sitting and sharing a meal and talking to the person on the other side of the table, you actually become quite friendly. You actually start delving into areas that you don't even know about that person. The giving that we are spoken about, or the grace of giving, is not just financial. Yes, it's financial. Yes, it's spiritual. Yes, it's our gift. But it's about the giving of ourselves, our everything, our 100% of our bodies to that of God. That not only what you do now, but it's what you do to the end. It's what you do in the sight of God. And so in conclusion, we are to be more like the Corinthian church. We are called to once again lay our lives, like we sang in the beginning of the service, at the foot of the cross. We are to lay our lives there and say, not in my power, Lord, but in yours. Not in my faith, but in your faith. I have faith in you. And in you am I able to build my faith for what we do and what we say. Amen.